Good morning and welcome to the January meeting of the Regional Governing Board of Southwest Vermont Regional Technical Center. Welcome all over here. Are there any public comments?
I don't see anyone raising their hand or indicating.
Seeing none, but move on to the agenda. Need someone to move the minutes from last month's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting the minutes from last month's meeting?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, payroll and payroll warrants, number 1024, 1025, and 1027.
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sounds unanimous. Vendor warrants 1023 and 1026.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I just had a question. I noticed there was a $15 for Facebook. What do you have to pay Facebook to put a advertisement on their site? Is that the way it works?
Yes, if you want to what's called boost your postings, or send your certain postings out to a targeted audience, you do have to pay. The fee is very small.
Yeah, $15. Yeah.
Yeah. We use that once in a while for job advertisements or open house things where we want to get a good reach to. So we pay a little bit of money to get those put out.
Thank you.
And I had one question with the B&H video. There's a note on 2 orders of cameras that said COVID money going against this. I was just wondering what that, if you could clarify. It's on page 3 of 1023. And there's 2 line items that show COVID dollars for 1,243 going against this.
So I know what this is, but I'll let the business manager answer it.
I was going to say, it's for, with gear funds, with the grant, we're just indicating anything that is going against gear funds, and it's allowing us to be able to better instruct during the remote hybrid times. And it was a qualifying expense. So it's just a notation for us, if we were to look back over the years, why that money was spent the way it was. And so it's a connection to the gear funds. Does any other questions on it?
No, but I have a comment. I would think that just like the notebooks, the computer notebooks that you put out, you would have to, because of the essence of the class, you would also have to put out cameras. Does that make sense to you, Dane?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yes, for the video production. So thank you.
Any other questions? We have a motion to move in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Cash flow, revenue, and expenses. You want to go through that, Becky? Or
So
do we
again,
just-
typically the treasurer prepares the treasurer's report, and then I prepare just the revenue and expenses monthly. So are there any questions on anything regarding any of the documents presented?
No.
Okay. So that's, if there aren't any questions, I'm all set.
do we have to move to accept those then?
So moved.
Second?
I
All in
second.
favor?
Aye.
Any?
Aye.
All right. Okay, committee reports. Are there any committee reports? Seeing none or hearing none, we'll move on to action items.
John, it looks like the first two go to Becky.
Okay.
So the first one, you will find recently placed in the Dropbox, the ballot warning. It is actually still in draft form, so I just want to talk about it. And there are certain items on the ballot warning that I want to make sure, that the board accepts, that are written in there at this point. Because of the circumstances with the elections, some things on the ballot warning are still not determined. For example, the very beginning of it, it is not going to be an open town meeting at the Bennington Firehouse this year. At this point, it is going to be some form of teleconference. They're talking about using Zoom. They're debating whether to use one Zoom link for all schools and local meetings. I'm still in discussions. I'm within this group that's going back and forth about how they're going to run town meeting. And so I cannot put that information on the warning yet. That's why it's still in draft form. If it ends up that each school does their own link, then we'll use our typical link for our meeting. But they're leaning toward using one central link for all of the town meeting. They also are planning on proposing different times for the different schools. And in a draft example, and again, I want to stress example, they had us listed at 4:30 in the example. So I'm not even sure what time our board would meet during the town meeting. Typically, we're usually around 6:30. But we're also usually one of the first ones within the town meeting. So I am waiting for that information. So that's why part of it is a draft. As you go down through some of the other items that are up, that are not determined yet, North Bennington, I spoke with the town clerk in Bennington, and she's pretty sure that the election location for North Bennington will be in Bennington again for this election. But until I get a definite confirmation, I'm not moving forward with that. That's what they've done the last election. They held it at the Bennington Firehouse. So I'm assuming, and she's assuming it will be the same. So I'm still waiting for finalization. I know there's a select board meeting tonight in Bennington about election locations and polling times. So I'm hoping I would hear definite confirmation. Manchester, I spoke with the town clerk, and they are at this point planning on moving forward, but she wanted to call me back with a definite confirmation. But right now, when I spoke with her, it was still going to be the regular election on the 2nd at the town hall in Manchester. But for some reason, there was some hesitation, and she wanted to call me back. So I'm waiting. Residents of Reedsboro, which is unusual, they will not be voting on March 2nd. When I spoke with them, they're going to, during the meeting the day before on March 1st, have 3 people present at the meeting, ask to move and reschedule the election to a date in May. And again, it's undetermined at this point. They do not know the date or time. So at this point, the only thing I can do on this warning is to indicate that it will be in May at a date and time to be determined. Just because they are sending school, I want to make sure it's on the warning. I know they're not really doing the election, but they are doing a town meeting with 3 members. So I just wanted to give as much information as I could. And I'm not sure, maybe with the warning, it's not necessary, but I want to share what I do know. And Sandgate, I am still waiting for a confirmation back. I called and left an email, but they have limited office hours. So I'm hoping that I will be able to confirm those dates and times and hope to confirm that they are still doing the election. So it's the only things on the warning that I'm still kind of waiting for confirmation is definite dates and times and locations for all the places. But what I want to make the board aware of is in the warning for the ballot, it lists that it is going to be, the election is going to be Australian ballot for all the locations indicated. That on the board, the articles for the pays for the district director, treasurer, clerk, assistant clerk, moderator, as indicated on that warning, the amount of our budget that's warned on there, but also the right to, on the articles, just looking through Article A, to make aware that we have four regional governing board, basically four openings coming up, which I want to just highlight: John Gauthier, Jackie Kelly, Ed Letourneau, and Mike Munson. Your terms end and you are up for re-election. And based on the legislature, they waived the petition process this year, but a consent of candidate form must still be filed. So you want to check the dates. I believe it's sometime by the second or third week in January. So you want to confirm the date that has to be filed. So on this warning, it indicates the 4 school directors positions will be on the ballot.
And Becky, could you repeat those 4 again, please, for the minutes?
Yep. For the minutes, it is John Gauthier, Jackie Kelly, Ed Letourneau, Mike Munson. Your terms expire 3/21, so all 4 of you are either up for re-election or, depending on what you choose to do. We have 4 positions or 4 openings basically on the regional governing board. So that's Article A on the warning. Article B is the budget that was voted in December, is listed on the warning, $4,073,500. So I just want to confirm that is the dollar amount listed. Article C, as discussed in the past, and we want to continue for this year, putting reserve funds of $60,000 and $20,000. $60,000 toward capital improvements and $20,000 toward the reserve for equipment. So for the board, what I'm asking is confirmation on those articles, that you agree with those articles on the ballot, on the warning for the election or for the meeting. And the other piece is that once these dates and times are finalized, I do need all the regional governing board members to sign this warning, and it can be signed electronically through DocuSign like we've been doing. And I will send that out via email, and I'm asking that you please watch for it and sign it, because I have a deadline to bring it to town hall to get the town clerk to sign and get it posted by January 27th, but I'm hoping to do it by the week of January 18th. I'm hoping by that Friday, the 22nd, things will be confirmed, if not sooner. So I'm going to ask if you could please watch for this. But I think for the purposes of this meeting, if you could, I'm asking for maybe for the minutes that you vote and approve the warning articles A, B, C, that talk about the budget, the 4 positions open, and the reserve funds. And Mike, I'm not sure if anything else right now would need to be approved in order for them to sign it and make it legal to move forward.
No, from my recollection, it's just the ballot as you have presented for them, with the exceptions of what you talked about, which are those couple towns that have not decided when I guess they're voting or how.
So that's the ballot warning, and if we could move forward with that, and then I'll come back about the announced tuition.
I'll move the ballot warning.
I'll second it.
So Fran made the
Is there
comment.
any more discussion?
How-
All those in
I
favor
have
of
a question.
warning? Whoops, sorry.
How is our budget gonna pass if towns haven't decided to vote on the budget?
There right now, it sounds like there's only one community that's one of our sending school communities that is not voting until May. They will be holding an election and voting, but not until May. But all of the other communities are currently voting. And I guess to answer that question, Ed, and I might ask someone else to kind of answer it as well. I'm assuming we have to officially wait until after their election is held before we can say, yes, our budget has passed. So we're kind of in a holding pattern until that final election takes place.
That's
I
a
don't
great
know.
question, Ed. Becky, what was the town again?
The town is Reedsboro.
Reedsboro, yeah.
So Ed, I mean, given the time that you've been on the board and the time I've been with the district, you know, by the time all the other towns come in, we'll have a very good understanding whether or not our budget passed without the Reedsboro vote. However, I would agree with Becky. I think I saw Mike Munson shaking his head that we would have to wait until all the votes were certified to make sure that our budget was officially passed. I mean, it generally passes on a very wide margin. I would not be surprised this year if it passed on a less wide margin, given the state that we're in. But I don't know. We'll see when it goes out to the voters. Historically, knock on wood, they have passed it every year by a very large margin, as long as I've been with the center, and that's 21 years. So, you know, here's hoping for another good vote. I think the budget that was put together is very fair and equitable and in the constraints of what we need to operate with. And I know Becky showed that very long graph from, you know, years ago till today, and our budget's been basically flat. I mean, yes, it's gone up a little bit here and there, but you know, you've not seen a 5, 6, 8, or 10% increase in our budget in years. It's down in very small numbers. And a reminder to folks that are watching that the state, through state aid, pays over 80% of the announced tuition cost to the sending schools. So that tuition number you're about to vote on, announced tuition, technically is what a sending school pays, but it's not out of their pocket. The state does reimburse almost 80% of that. So that's a really important feature, I think, to know about and be able to sell people or explain to people in the community when they ask, well, why is tuition so high? Well, it's not really. But this is the number that we have to produce based on the formulas the state gives us. So went on a tangent there, but what's new? Does that answer your question, Ed?
Yes, I was really wondering if it was going to impact, if we do not have an affirmative vote until May, will that affect how you're planning for the coming year? Did you understand what
I think on my part, if the budget is extremely close, or if we're dependent on any votes to make it pass from that community, then yes, absolutely, it would plan on how we would move forward. But if there's such a large kind of margin between what's already been voted on and certified and what we're waiting on in Reedsboro, then we would probably move forward with the planning with the budget as proposed.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ed, you know, we on election day and voting day, you know, we get the results pretty quickly from Bennington, North Bennington, Shasberry, the larger towns that tally that night. We usually have a good feel the next morning about where the budget stands. And we usually have 5 or 6 outlying towns that don't report until the next day or even later. And we generally have a good idea that next morning of what it looks like. So I'm not super worried about it, Ed.
No, I'm not worried either. I think the population of Reedsboro is about 600 people, so
Well, their vote counts.
probably
Too.
only
I don't know.
300 of them that are eligible to vote. So that's the number that we would work with.
I think Jackie, you have a question, and you're muted, Jackie.
unmute. So my question is, if this is not going to be finalized until May, then we really can't have a meeting until May.
I could respond to that.
Don't think
Just-
so.
Seeing as the state legislature is working on a bill right now that would make it possible even for a town to change the date of its town meeting day. So that hasn't been passed yet. That's just been introduced to the legislature. So Reedsboro might be assuming that that's going to go through and that they'll be able to change their date. And a part of that proposed bill is that basically the existing terms would extend until that final date. So we would all still be board members until that final vote came in.
But when would this take effect?
If the legislature is hoping to pass it as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dane.
Thank you.
Jackie, great question. I know there's a few bills in the Senate and in legislature that they're going to pass regarding voting and extensions of board members and et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of things going on.
So I have another question. This morning in the paper, it came out that there was extra funds, $163 million that was extra, I guess, and for the legislature. So their projected gaps that we had for education, would those be resolved?
Jackie, I don't know the answer to that question. I read the same article you read. And from reading that, I would assume that they may use that money to help offset the deficit and the tax rate for next year, but I don't know. It's certainly better news than what we had back in the spring, that they were going to be in a deficit situation. So I think we'll have to see what happens with that money and what they decide to do with it. Anywhere it goes, we put to good use. So.
Well, I really hope it goes to the tax rate because we all need that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need a vote on the ballot warning as presented. Can we have a motion
I made the motion.
and a
Second,
second?
second,
All those in favor of approval, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. The announced tuition rate. Didn't we approve the announced tuition rate at the last meeting?
We did approve the announced tuition rate. I just want to bring it back before the board to make sure it's in the minutes. I have to present and send to all the sending schools the announced tuition. And so this is the legal form for it that I just wanted to share with you. You had voted and approved the minutes and the announced tuition. And because it has to be sent to all sending schools and to the town, I just wanted to have it presented one more time. So we had voted on and approved the $22,307 as the announced tuition. But I also wanted to make it clear for the minutes that this is with nothing backed out of it. And what I mean by that is some announced tuitions throughout the state take away the tuition reduction grant. And we do not, because we have schools potentially from outside our district, such as Hoosick Falls in New York, and they have to pay the full tuition. They do not gain the assistance from the tuition assistance grant or the supplemental, which what we know as the general state support grant. They do not benefit from either of those. So our announced tuition is with nothing backed out of it. But again, as Mike had said earlier, that is not what the sending schools end up paying, because the state supports a large percentage of this dollar amount. But for sending schools like Hoosick Falls, this is what they're billed for one FTE, one full-time equivalent student. So I just wanted to share it one more time with the board for those minutes on record of how that works and what will be shared with the sending schools.
So that will the state's contribution to the Vermont schools, will that be shared with the on the ballot or not? Are you saying it won't be?
The ballot doesn't list the announced tuition at all.
Oh,
It's
okay.
something we have to send, but it's not on the actual ballot. On the ballot is just the total budget, which we already talked about. This is just so that it would be on record again that we have the announced tuition that was voted on in December, and clarifying that it is with nothing backed out of it.
Okay.
Just for the purposes, because the announced tuition, they gather and release the data throughout the state for all the schools. And so I just wanted to clarify, when you look at the numbers, our announced tuition is the full amount before we subtract any state assistance at all.
Okay. Thanks. So I guess we need to move to approve again the announced tuition,
I'll move it.
and we get a second. I'll second it. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? It's unanimous. Mike, you've got a resignation.
Unfortunately, yes, I do. I'm going to read you a resignation. This was received via email on January 1st in the afternoon. It says, "Dear Mike, please accept this email as my resignation from the Culinary Arts instructor position at Southwest Tech. Though I tried extremely hard to make it work, I struggled with the remote learning process and realized I'm not at all connected with most of my students. This was evident from the beginning, but I hung in as long as possible because of the support and help I received from you and the amazing staff at Southwest Tech. Thank you for all you've done for me. I hope you understand my decision. Sincerely, Daniel Jackson." Daniel just started with us this year, back in September. He, by all accounts, has done an amazing job in culinary arts. I know that none of you have got to experience that because the building's closed for visitors. But I can tell you that the kitchen looks entirely different. The cafe looks different, and the classroom looks different. Very neat, organized, and put together. Not that it wasn't before, it's just the extra step now I've noticed. And I still think Daniel did a great job. I think he was connected with the students. And I think everyone here at the school thinks the same thing, and we're sad to see him go. But we understand that we all have to make decisions sometimes that are tough. We have advertised for a replacement position or replacement for Chef Jackson. The usual, the banner, and social media, as Ken asked about our $15 in the beginning of the meeting. Some of that was used, or some more will go towards the posting on Facebook to get that out to people. And then other folks have connections down in the Albany area with some of the colleges. So we're hoping that we have a good pool of candidates. We've already received, I think, 5 or 6 since it was posted on Monday. We are hoping to fill it immediately because we're in the middle of a school year. Fortunately, we have it filled for the next 2 weeks. Daniel's last day was Friday. And for this week and next week, we have a series of substitute teachers that have been in there before. One, Dave Dutcher, and the second, April Francis. They have both served long-term in culinary in the past for both medical leave and for maternity leave. So they're familiar with the program and will be able to keep it going for a couple weeks. So I'm very happy with that we have those folks to rely on. And so I guess I need a motion to accept Daniel's resignation.
So moved.
I second.
All those in favor of accepting the resignation of the chef?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
It's unanimous.
Mike, are we still down in the machine shop, teacher too?
Yes, Ken, we are. We still have Tim Mullen, who was the paraprofessional in there for quite some time, who is still agreeing to cover the class until we find somebody. But it's a great question, and thanks for asking it. We don't have any applicants. We had one applicant that on paper didn't really seem that qualified. That's where I'll leave it at that. Have we re-advertised it? No. I mean, we could certainly re-advertise it again and put it out in the front, the front of the news feed again to get that. But part of me feels like we're so far into the school year that changing it mid-semester will be tough, unless Mr. Mullen's willing to do it the rest of the year. By the way, he's doing a great job in there. The days that we're in person with kids, they're out on the floor, the machines are on, the welding units are being used. So, I mean, he is doing a great job, but we are short another teacher, yes.
Right.
And I will tell you that one of the stumbling blocks, and you've heard this before, for hiring new teachers, there's a couple. One is the teacher prep program that teachers have to go through, which is very intense. It takes 3 or 4 years of basically full-time schooling while you're working full-time. And the second piece of it is salary. And, a lot of these folks, well, they have to come from industry. They can't just come from a teaching background. And often they are taking a big pay cut to come and teach. Sometimes, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 pay cut to come and teach. It's the exact reason we don't have an engineering instructor. I can tell you that for a fact. I can tell you that it was a factor in manufacturing, both of those factors, and I can tell you it's a factor in culinary arts. And so I think we're going to continue to see that as time goes on. We can't fix it today. It's just a heads up that these are things we hear on exit interviews, and I think it's important to share them with the board. That's all.
Is Mr. Mullins getting long-term sub pay or?
No, he's not at this point. Business office has figured out what the appropriate pay rate is for him. And under the teacher's contract, we definitely can't call him a long-term sub because he's not. A long-term sub implies the teacher's coming back at some point. And in both instances, both in culinary and manufacturing, the said teacher is not coming back. So therefore, they're not long-term sub jobs.
That doesn't seem fair to him, but I guess we can't do anything about it.
Yeah, it's what the contract between the paraprofessionals and the teacher reads. Becky's gone over it multiple times, and that's what it is. What it is, and it is unfortunate in this situation, but we are bound by contract. John, do you want me to move on to my report?
Yes, please. I thought that's what we were doing. I'm sorry.
I was checking. It was quiet. I didn't want to cut anybody off. That 1 second lag in Zoom that sometimes you cut people off with. So I will be brief because if the meeting's still going, I will turn it over to Becky. She's the co-host. I have to leave fairly soon for an appointment, but I have a few minutes. So first off, it's hard to believe that we are going to open the second semester of school very soon. We are wrapping up the first semester very quickly. So quickly, in fact, it's this week and a couple of days next week, and that's it. The new semester starts on the week of the 25th. You say, what does that mean for us? Well, a lot of our intro classes go away for the second semester. We only have about half of our teachers that teach that intro class again for the second semester. There's no obligation to teach it, but some do. So we'll see less students this spring, and as you know, it's always that way. I didn't get a chance to share with you, I don't think, the fall FTE enrollments, but my recollection is around 174 or 175 FTEs, which is great. We were down in the 150 to 160. So we picked up a lot of students. Of course, we won't realize that FTE count in tuition reduction for a couple of years, but it'll pay off dividends in the future. So I'm very happy, given the pandemic, the number of students that we have. As I've said in the past, it's a really unfortunate year to have really good enrollment because basically every class has to be split in half to come to school. So that really is not great, but it's the only option we have. So there's been some questions about who has the authority to close the school and open and close schools due to COVID and other situations. And I just want to be clear on that. That in the event of COVID-related cases, we work very closely with the Department of Health, the Vermont Department of Health, to determine if we should do an entire school closure based on the risk factors of the person or student, whomever is infected. If it's just in one isolated area and we're confident that that student or teacher hasn't left that area, then perhaps we only close down that section of the building for a short period of time. And you can imagine that maybe it's one class, maybe it's two classes, maybe it's the entire school. It depends on consultation with them. However, at all times, the superintendent, which in this case is me for our school district, retains the full authority to open and close schools as needed, particularly on a short-term basis. Those generally are for, winter weather delays and things like that. But in this instance, it can be for COVID. Even without the blessing of the Department of Health, we have closed in the past for a day or two, just to make sure things are settled and we have the right information to go forward. We have seen cases at school with adults, with students. If you follow the news all around us in Bennington County and everywhere, quite frankly, but the numbers continue to go up. And all of our mitigation strategies are still in place, and we're doing the same thing we did since the first day of school with kids, just a lot more efficient than it used to be, because we're quick at it now. And I look forward to getting back and helping with that. So to answer it, the superintendent has the authority to open and close schools as seen as needed, and that's true in all districts, not just ours. We do try and coordinate our closures with other schools since it impacts them significantly when we are closed. But we don't all line up with the exact same place in closure or opening. So we do the best that we can. Like I said, Culinary Arts, we have advertised for the position and we hope to start interviewing either this week or next week. I will tell you that as the year goes on and drags on, there is becoming a lot of fatigue in the schools, both for students, parents, teachers, your administrators, employees, period. I think we all went back to school in the fall, knowing that we would be doing this for some time, but here we are in the middle of January and we're still doing the same thing. And the virus continues to swirl around us. So, we're going to continue to be open as long as safely possible. And when I feel it's not safe to be there, or there's enough staff out that we can't run the school, then we'll be closed and do remote instruction. That's just the way it is. These are really tough calls to make because some people win, some people lose, some people get upset, some people are happy. And there's no middle ground with this. There are some factions that think we should be open with every kid in every seat. There's no problem. And other families who don't think we should be open at all, and everything in between. So what I know is the best place for kids to be is in school. It's where they receive food, counseling, support. Now, they don't get that at home, but it's a very nurturing environment in school, and it's the best place for them. But I won't put kids in jeopardy or our staff in jeopardy if there is enough illness around the building. And that's irregardless of the other schools, whether that's MAU or Arlington or BBA, whatever it is. They all have their own challenges with closing and opening their schools due to COVID. So I think that we've been fairly fortunate that we've been able to stay open as long as and operate as long as we have. I hope that we can continue to do that over the next few months as vaccines get more rolled out and as this thing moves on. So it's been a very interesting year, but I just wanted to say that people are getting really tired, really frustrated with the whole process. And just like I think all of us are, even outside of work. It's tough to be in a building all day, teaching in a mask, have kids wear masks, no real breaks, no room in the hallways, a bagged lunch, like it all plays together at some point, and then hopefully next fall, we can look back at this and say that we'll remember 2020 for something and go from there. So the last thing that I have for you is that if you've driven by the school in the last month, which I'm sure you have, Take a look out front and notice that the old Career Development Center sign is down. That was in the little strip out front in the grass. It's still there. We decided to bury a time capsule underneath it, dated 2020, and it has all the information in 2020, including our election, COVID, what the school enrollment looks like, who works there, et cetera. And the fact that someday, hopefully, someone will unearth that, hopefully in 20 or 30 years and not in a year or two, and take a look at it and say, what in the world is this? Including our crazy schedule of where kids are at what time. No kids' names, of course, just the skeleton schedule. And then Dave Dents and his students then place the old marker kind of level with the ground so we can see it's underneath there. I'll get mowed over, and so it's still kind of a piece to the school, but it's a piece that we're retiring and doing something different. So I think we got a good tribute with the piece that's out there still, and the time capsule underneath, which we had kind of fun putting together. So I can't tell you everything that's in there, otherwise it would ruin the surprise in 20 years, but it is there. And I want to tell you that, and I do have to go shortly in this questions. Mr. Denson and his class thought it'd be a really quick job to knock down that sign and just, put it back in the ground where I wanted it. This is all my idea, by the way. Well, they dug into it, and I would say that the base holding the stone was probably 10 times as big as the actual sign itself. I don't know if they just took a hole and dumped like 20,000 pounds of concrete in it or what, but it broke a tooth off of the backhoe. I mean, they spent days getting it out of there. And finally, Dave's like, "Is it okay if we just sort of bury it level with the ground?" Like, that works fine. It was a great experiment, but man, it was really put in there. I can tell you that. So, it wasn't going anywhere. The sign itself, we could just push over with our hands, but the footing was definitely made for life. So that's under the ground there if you ever want to look at it. So that's what I have, unless you have questions for me. I guess my last point would be, we don't normally meet again until after election day, after elections, which is in March. So John, that's something you'll have to decide as a board, whether you want to meet in February or not. Historically, we don't, but because it falls on the vacation week, but that's up to the board, not up to me. So any questions that I can answer on my piece?
If there's no business usually conducted during that month, I'll leave it to the board to decide. Those who wish to just follow the schedule as it usually is, someone make a motion to do that. If we don't meet in February, we don't meet in February.
I'll make the motion.
Can we get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thanks. So the next meeting would be electronic with the town meeting. Is that correct? Once the schedule is announced for presentations to the town over Zoom or whatever.
Yes, it'll likely be the next meeting will be the town meeting, and we'll get the information out to you. We're just not sure how they're doing that yet. Is it going to be one long meeting, multiple meetings, etc.? So
okay, I just wanted to let people know that they'll get some sort of a notification. We'll let them know about that.
It will.
At some point.
It will definitely be March 1st, but as far as the time, that's to be determined. And it will definitely be some form of whether it be Zoom or some other teleconference. Right now, they're discussing using Zoom for the platform. As soon as I know, we will make sure that a message goes out to all the board members, and that will also confirm that I'm ready to have you sign the warning for the ballot. But all we can say right now is March 1st.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other items anybody wishes to bring before the board?
I just have one other thing. I'm just going to ask if the board members, as we get warrants and payroll warrants and vendor warrants approved, like at today's meeting, things will be sent out via DocuSign. If you could, again, watch for them, sign, and then click the button that says that you're finished or completed, so it does move forward. We have some from the last meeting kind of hanging out there, and it may not be anybody that's currently in this meeting today, but some of the things are not complete because we don't have everyone's signature. So I'm going to ask again, just kind of at least once a week, if you could watch for anything coming from the business office that might require a DocuSign signature. As practice after today's meeting, either today or tomorrow, I will gather up the ones you approved today and send out for you to sign. So I'm just asking, if you could watch for that so that we can move those forward. It's not like our normal meeting where we get to just pass it around the room and have it completed. So I just would appreciate that. Thank you.
Could you send a reminder to anybody that hasn't signed it? Because sometimes things get lost in the email box.
Yes, there's an option in DocuSign for me to resend, and I've done that. And in one instance in the past, it was a change in email address that I didn't receive notification on. So that's been taken care of. But just as practice, if you could just watch for them, and that's helpful. Sometimes they get stagnant if they're sitting there. But yes, Ed, I do a resend once a week to kind of hopefully move it to the top of someone's inbox. Thank you.
Thank you. I haven't seen any notices, so I guess I signed.
So that would mean you're okay. Yes, thank you.
Any other business?
I'll move adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you,
Any
everybody.
opposed? It's unanimous.
Right.
Thank you all for being here. We appreciate
See
it.
you
Mike,
later.
It's good.
Thank you
Michael,
all.
it's good to see you back.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Yeah, thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody.
All right, take care.